Welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and today I'm going to be bringing you my top 10 favorite Sparks albums. This top 10 list was hard to compile. These were probably even harder to rank than my top 10 favorite Zappa albums, which you can find by clicking above. Sparks has been around for like 5 decades, and they've had a bit of a mini renaissance in the last 20 years. And I've noticed when people talk about their top 10 Sparks albums, they're peppering in some albums from the last 20 years. As much as I love some of their more contemporary work, especially Lil Beethoven and Hippopotamus, which I feel are the best of the lot, this isn't that kind of channel. I'm going to be bringing you a heaping helping of what I consider Sparks' magical period. So buckle up, because we're taking a very weird ride through my 10 favorite Sparks albums. So Kimono My House, and the puns aren't working. If you've been enjoying the bands that I'm bringing you, and you would like to find a way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon. It's at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. And thanks. Number 10, Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat. This was released in June of 1984, and saw Ron rocking a kinder, gentler mustache. Gone is the Hitler/Chaplin mustache, and it is replaced with a 1920s gangster mustache. This album is one I feel never seems to get any love, even among Sparks fans. But I love it, and I blame the fact that it's their 13th album on its bad luck. This LP houses one of my all-time favorite Sparks songs, the title track, Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat, which has an ominous undercurrent to the music, and one of Russell's most intense vocal performances. Love Scenes is luscious and lovely, Pretending to be Drunk is lascivious and loony, and the new wave concoction Progress is the best song that Thomas Dolby never did. Free from any sense of snark or irony, With All My Might is one of the purest and most beautiful love songs Sparks ever wrote. With Everybody Move, the band take ownership of their hard-fought status as dance floor kings. A song that sings itself sounds like Roy Orbison backed by Vangelis, and it works. My favorite line is, "We think we own the world and own the stars, and yet in fact we barely own our cars." Sisters pairs gorgeous backing vocals and sublime music with a story of a menage a trois that's a possible felony in some states. Kiss Me Quick sounds like something Art of Noise would aspire to. And album closer Sparks in the Dark Part 2. Part 1 was simply a short intro tacked on the front of Everybody Move. Closes the book on this album with one of their most ear-cloying instrumentals. I feel this LP is criminally underrated, and it sneaks into my top 10. At number 9, Big Beat, released in October of 1976. This was produced by Jeffrey Lesser and Rupert Holmes. What now? That's right, Rupert Pina Colada Song Holmes. But you wouldn't know it from the sound of this album. This is Sparks' big rock and roll album. They had ditched their British band, came to America to record this album, and it boasts a hard rock sound. And you can hear that right off the bat with the opening track, Big Boy, which chronicles the travails of a Goliath-like character and sounds like it belongs on the soundtrack to William Friedkin's Cruising. While we're talking about Big Beat, I have to bring up the film Roller Coaster, which came out in 1977 and was, unbeknownst to me, the first time I encountered Sparks. I was just a child at the time, and my parents took me to see Roller Coaster in the theater. Yes, parental guidance was suggested, if not executed. In any case, this film captured the Big Beat era of Sparks as a live band in the amusement park, playing the songs Filler Up and Big Boy. By the way, don't sleep on this film. It was written by my beloved Richard Levinson and William Link, the creators of Columbo. And yes, that is music by Lalo Schifrin. Rest in peace, George Segal. Check it out. In any case, the track I Want to Be Like Everybody Else brilliantly flips the Kinks' masterful I'm Not Like Everybody Else on its head. Nothing to Do is the best boredom song outside of Iggy Pop's I'm Bored, and beat the Ramones' I Just Want to Have Something to Do to the punch by 2 years. I Bought the Mississippi River is a humorous song that sees a guy acquiring rivers the way most people acquire pets. While musically, Everybody's Stupid is as close as Sparks will ever get to Clash City Rockers, the attitude of the song is pure Sparks. And I like to see the song's message as a pointed jab at the millions of music fans who were lining up not to buy Sparks albums. Throw Her Away and Get a New One equates women with models of cars, and kicks off side 2 with equal parts snark and hooks. Confusion and Screwed Up sees Ron's keyboard wrest control from the guitars for a couple of textbook Sparks earworms. White Women and I Like Girls are comical takes, long on music and short on lyrical inspiration. Incidentally, I Like Girls is a re-recording of a track that dates back to the days when the Mael brothers were still in Half Nelson. Bottom line, this album sees the Mael brothers packing more punch than ever before. And though the road they took here did not lead to commercial success, I love this detour. Number 8, Sparks in Outer Space, released in April of 1983. This album kicks off with their quote-unquote hit, Cool Places, a Russell duet with the adorable Jane Wiedlin, which made it to number 49 on the US Hot 100 chart. Incidentally, this 12-inch single release of Cool Places with Jane and Russell. Jane Russell. How have I never thought of that before? It sees Jane and Russell looking like the prettiest lumberjacks you've ever seen. Incidentally, the vinyl has Cool Places on both sides, even though the sleeve says it's supposed to be a track called Sports. So that's kind of fun. The track Popularity is the perfect topic for the Maels to skewer at this point in their career, as popularity couldn't matter less to the band. Praying for a Party witnesses a young person's mercenary prayer for a little fun, while all you ever think about is sex, sees a couple who is too busy making love, and in all the wrong places, to actually fall in love. The keyboard hook on All You Ever Think About Is Sex is such an earworm, and Ron just tosses off these lines like they're nothing. Please Baby Please pairs one of Russell's best vocal performances with a dark, new romantic synth track. Rockin' Girls sees the song's subject fall in love with the titular group, who I assume are groupies, due to the line, I hope I never have to see the doctor 'cause of you. I hope you never have to see the doctor 'cause of me. My second favorite song on this album, next to Cool Places, is I Wish I Looked a Little Better. Aside from the irresistible music, the lyrics are charming as hell, about an ugly fella who just can't get any love. And this track speaks to the wonderful dichotomy with Sparks, where you have a lot of lyrical intent coming from the mind of a guy with non-traditional good looks, coming out of the mouth of someone with traditional good looks. Russell is that spoonful of sugar, if you will, that makes Ron's lyrics go down. And I just love that odd formula of the ugly, biting sarcasm and then the beautiful sarcasm delivery device. Anyway, Jane Wiedlin returns for Lucky Me, Lucky You, and her gorgeous voice again pairs beautifully with Russell. The two had a very short romance. So short that it's almost like Cool Places is the soundtrack to their relationship, and Lucky Me, Lucky You, a mere 6 songs later, is the soundtrack to their breakup. A fun bunch of guys from outer space and Dance, goddammit, are weird and witty tracks that leave an oddly delicious taste in your mouth. This album, I'm told, is a challenging listen. I don't hear that. I hear a densely packed dance pop album with an abundance of earworms all jockeying for position. Perhaps some see that as too much of a good thing. I consider it uncut 80s fun. Number 7. Number 1 in Heaven. Seventh Heaven, baby. Released in March of 1979. This is the Mael's dance album, as evidenced by the fact that there are only 6 tracks on this album, and the album is still about 34 minutes long. For this album, the brothers Mael teamed up with the genius producer Giorgio Moroder, and you can really tell from the opening track, Tryouts for the Human Race, a sort of sperm cell theme song, which opens up with that unmistakable Moroder dance pulse. This album sees Sparks seamlessly integrate their quirky formula into a disco format, and the results are impressive. The Sex Workers Celebration Academy Award performance and the male gigolo anthem, La Dolce Vita, are disarming dance floor burners, and I defy you not to move to them. The hectic track Beat the Clock is a clever take on how life plays out to the non-stop march of time. I like to think that the song My Other Voice may be about how Ron views Russell's enticing vocal contributions to the band. Between the lush, overlapping synths and the mechanized voice Ron used on this track, it almost sounds like someone put the Alan Parsons Project in a blender, which wouldn't be a bad idea. The final track, the number 1 song in Heaven, is this album's crowning achievement, and it's really the perfect synthesis of Sparks and the Marauder Sound. The song's lyrics purport that it was written by God, and I haven't heard anything that makes me doubt it. The final lines are some of the most cutting and spot on in the Mael's entire catalog. This is the #1 song in heaven. Why are you hearing it now, you ask? Maybe you're closer to here than you imagine. Maybe you're closer to here than you care to be. And the music. Listen, if you don't like disco, there's nothing for you here. But if you love dance music, welcome to your favorite Sparks LP. Number 6, Introducing Sparks, released in October of 1977. I just love the design on this album. Russell? Wrong. Russell? Wrong. Incidentally, this is a white label promo copy on gorgeous red vinyl that came out at the time, and I think it matches their outfits perfectly, right down to their little red pinky rings they wear. Just a beautiful cover. I love this album. I am not in the majority. So much so that this album is credited with destroying what limited fame and success the band had built up by now, which, as the title suggests, isn't much. Only Sparks would put out their 7th album and title it Introducing Sparks. I believe it is an in-joke on their lack of popularity, that they had to reintroduce themselves again. And in fact, Sparks keeps introducing themselves to us on every single album, as they have no shortage of ways to reinvent themselves every time out. A big surprise is a gorgeous track with some of the best vocal harmonies the band has ever recorded. In fact, the backing vocals on this entire album are uniformly great, and if pressed, that's a major reason why I love this album. The guitar-heavy occupation is a real rocker, and I wouldn't be surprised if the riff was a leftover from their Big Beat album of the previous year. The humorous lyrics speak to how everyone, from cowboys to TV announcers, needs an occupation. Unless, of course, your daddy's rich. The track Ladies is emblematic of why I love this album. Russell carries one of the band's most beautiful melodies over Beach Boy-esque harmonies. I'm Not is a badass throwdown about a lethargic layabout that pairs a crisp guitar tone with a booming rhythm. This brings me to one of my favorite tracks here, Forever Young. No, not that Forever Young by Alphaville, but I love this one just as much. Another rocker with solid drumming and tasty guitar. This track's message sums up how the Maels are able to keep reinventing themselves. There is a youthful impishness to how they attack music, and it's ironically in full flower on Forever Young. Goofing Off presents lyrics celebrating the weekend, using elements of Russian folk music, and somehow it works. Girls on the Brain shares musical DNA with Iggy Pop's Night Clubbing, but the lyrics, which present the titular situation as a medical condition, are pure Sparks. Over the Summer betrays the boys' California roots, as it's a pitch-perfect Beach Boys facsimile that comes across like an outstanding outtake from the Smiles sessions. LP closer Those Mysteries brings a satisfying and existential end to this album. So damn good. Be aware, it's somewhat of a transitional album, and I tend to love transitional albums, with the band trying on a new persona on every track, and that's really what I love about this album. Number 5, Whomp That Sucker, released in July 1981. This is just a fun, wacky album that packs a real musical punch. Tips for Teens is a hysterical lead-off track. And hysterical? And hysterical. Classic. With all the aforementioned tips, aiming to make any listeners blossoming into adulthood feel better about the future. Although it probably ends up doing the opposite. Funny Face is an undeniable dance-oriented track, with brilliant lyrics about how a beautiful face isn't all it's cracked up to be. I like to think of Russell and Ron as the before and after in this song's particular facial tale. Where's My Girl rocks harder than most tracks on this album. The manic Upstairs goes on seemingly forever, and still isn't long enough. The Willies is a fun song that I could totally see being a Devo song, right down to Russell's Mark Mothersbaugh-like vocals. In fact, Russell sounds like Mark on several tracks on this album, so I wouldn't be shocked if a slight Devo influence hadn't seeped in there. I suspect the Willies referred to in the song is a terminal case of frequent masturbation, though as you all know, I suspect most songs are about masturbation. Don't Shoot Me is a brilliant tale about a big game hunter who gets his comeuppance, and it sounds very Mott the Hoople to me, which goes to show how many different sounds Sparks can throw at you. Susie Safety is a personal favorite. and one of the prettiest songs on the album. And it's also a nice, light respite from the other track's unrelenting cynicism. That's Not Nastasia and Wacky Women are a delightful 1-2 punch to end this album, with some of Ron's most inventive keyboard work. Equal parts dance hall filler and new wave clarion call, this LP can be gloriously schizophrenic at times, which I feel makes it a very rewarding listen. Number 4. Propaganda, released in November of 1974, the same year as their breakthrough album Kimono My House, with the same producer, Muff Winwood. 1974 was a hell of a year for Sparks. To this day, Propaganda is the highest charting album in Sparks' homeland of America, which is surprising given the lack of quote-unquote hits on the LP. I have to comment on the cover. Obviously, kidnapped, I assume by a drug cartel. No good is going to come of their situation, and yet I can't help smiling about it. At work, at home, at play is as musically adventurous as anything the band would ever do. And I sometimes listen to that track over and over and over, and cannot exhaust its musical inventiveness. Reinforcements begins unassumingly, and then explodes into a rocker with some of the band's most heady lyrics, which equate a night on the town looking for love with a soldier trying to stay alive on the battlefield. Check out these lyrics. You intercept my SOS, in order that no news of my distress will ever reach the home front. And about my camouflage, well, it didn't work on you. In fact, most things they tell recruits never seem to do. Not one wrong word, and so conversational. Pithy, great pith. Thanks But No Thanks is a delightful tale of a child obeying their parents' wishes and coming straight home, spurning the offer of strangers offering them candy. Check out the genius of these lyrics. Thanks, but no thanks anyway. I know that you're all okay, but my orders come from high above me, about a foot or two above me. In other words, the height of his or her parents. Genius. And the song's sweet backing vocals are just icing on the cake. Don't Leave Me Alone With Her is a plea to the song subject's unwitting chaperones to protect him from a quote-unquote Hitler wearing heels. Though 3 other songs off the album were released ahead of it in other countries, Achoo was the only single off the album released in America. And it's easy to hear why. An earworm of a piano piece, Achoo is a high point on a mind-expanding album. Who Don't Like Kids pairs a dastardly guitar line with a danceable drum beat and rocks hard enough to set up album ender Bon Voyage, a lush and languid farewell for this LP. This album is Sparks firing on all cylinders and is a low-key masterpiece. Number 3, Indiscreet, released in October 1975. This album was produced by Tony Visconti, the wonderful producer of all those brilliant albums with David Bowie and a great deal of Mark Bolan's Tyrannosaurus Rex and T-Rex albums. And he did a masterful job here. Album opener, Hospitality on Parade, seems like it was stolen from a Monty Python record. Happy Hunting Ground is an 80s song about 7 years ahead of its time musically, with lyrics about someone desperate to get back into school because it was the best stocked dating pool. Without Using Hands is exactly the same kind of sweet little piano piece that Freddie Mercury used to do so well on Queen albums. The next song, Get in the Swing, like a lot of this album actually, sounds like a track from the most bizarre stage musical you've never seen. And that's a compliment. How Are You Getting Home is one of my favorites on this album, and really brings that sinister undercurrent, musically and lyrically, that delights me about Sparks. It's got rocking guitar, an irresistible sing-along chorus, and a message that seems to skewer the male chauvinism of offering a lady a ride home as a pickup line. Side 2, track 1, the power slot, goes to Pineapple, which seems to simply sing the sweet praises of the titular fruit until the final punchline, when we realize this natural food is being brought to us from a factory. The song Tits, yeah, you heard me, follows a drunk in a bar who starts off bearing his soul to his drinking buddy, lamenting his place in the household mammary food chain, and then revealing that his wife is cheating on him, until it slowly occurs to him that his drinking buddy is the one who's been seeing his wife. Not your typical pop song. I have to mention, in general, the musicianship on this album is stellar, and the bass playing on The Lady Is Lingering is as nimble and fluid as you would expect from a Tony Visconti-produced album. I hate to bring up Devo again, as they were still only playing in their basement in 1975, but the song In the Future totally presages the sound that Devo would unleash on the world just a few years later. The throwback style of Looks, Looks, Looks is yet another different look on this unique album. And the song sounds like it was taped live at the Fish and Goose Soiree at the Overlook Hotel. Miss the Start, Miss the End, which I assume references the Mael brothers' parents, who didn't care whether they brought their kids to the movies at the beginning, middle, or end, is a beautifully fond farewell for this $3 bill of an album. In closing, I've listed this album at number 3, but if you force me to take only one album by Sparks on a desert island with me, which seemingly had electricity, I would probably choose this one, because I feel I would never fully exhaust its charms. Number 2, Kimono My House, released in May 1974. This album was produced by Muff Winwood, yes, little Stevie Winwood's older brother, and former bandmate in the Spencer Davis Group, and he did an excellent job here. Although Sparks had 2 albums prior to this one, I consider those 2 albums to really be half Nelson albums, and I consider this, Kimono My House, as the first proper Sparks album. They have their British backing band, and Ron's songwriting is totally unfettered. When I sat down to compile my 10 favorite Sparks albums, I had assumed that this LP was locked into number 1, and every other album by them would be competing for second place. It is a testament to Sparks' catalog that the race was as close as it was. This album opens up with perhaps Sparks' greatest song of all time, This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us. The music emerges slowly, as if out of the mists of time, gaining in volume and pulling us into another world, the microcosm of this song. The detailed imaginings of the song subject's failures, to his more visceral, increasing heartbeat, every moment of this ineffectual male's romantic disasters are cleverly chronicled. And that guitar solo, The Manic Amateur Hour is one of the band's most infectious songs, and a humorous take on sexual awakening, as well as the never-ending learning process that sex demands. The carnivalesque Falling in Love with Myself Again is an ode to the male ego. Musically, the song Here in Heaven sounds demonic, for lack of a better word, and is one of my favorites on this LP, detailing heaven as a very lonely place when the lover you left behind is still in good health. Thank God It's Not Christmas is a holiday hot take where the song's subject never wants his everyday sex party to end. I assume the tune lionizes a band's decadent days on tour, which will end for a Christmas break, at which point he'll be stuck having sex with his significant other. Yeah, cold-blooded. Hasta Mañana Monsieur delivers some tasty rock guitar, and Talent is an Asset is perhaps the bounciest tune on this whole LP, telling the tale of a musical prodigy who finds himself held prisoner by both his talent and his family. Complaints is a funny song about someone who works at a store's complaint department and who goes on vacation only to hear the non-stop complaining of his wife. In My Family sounds very Roxy music in the best possible way. Russell's voice on Equator is at its beautiful castrati apex. The song is about that horrid feeling when you begin to realize that you're being stood up. And I have a soft spot in my heart for the song's stark saxophone ending. It is a fantastically bizarre ending to this masterpiece of an album. Anyone who is new to Sparks would do well to start here. This album is a great starting point to hear all of the wonderful things that Sparks does well. So is the following album. Drum roll, please. Number 1, Angst In My Pants, released in May of 1982. From the second the first beat of this album starts, it's clear that it's a dance album. And one major reason why is that it was produced by Mac for Giorgio Moroder Enterprises. So Sparks are dropping another dance album. Not so fast. This is also a new wave album and a rock album. Frankly speaking, on most of their albums, Sparks flies wildly from one inspiration to another, sometimes to the detriment of the album as a whole. On this album, however, the band got the balance exactly right, and they create a hybrid genre all their own, where every song seems swiped with the same odd magical brush. Album opener Angst In My Pants, a tale of sexual urges, is the usual brilliant wordplay and musical beauty you've come to expect from Sparks. Sherlock Holmes is a gorgeous love song with a competitively jealous take on the titular detective, and it may just be my favorite song on this whole album. Nicotina is a tragic and very clever tale about a personified cigarette who meets her end in the lungs of a man with a cough. Mickey Mouse comes across as a TED Talk delivered by the iconic Disneyland rodent. Instant Weight Loss is one of the most gorgeous sounding songs I have ever heard in my life. And it's either about actual weight loss or cocaine addiction. Either way, you're gonna feel great, and it's a highlight on this album. Tarzan and Jane and The Decline and Fall of Me are other strong tracks with as many punchlines as hooks. The album ender, Eaten by the Monster of Love, which you may remember from the Nick Cage movie Valley Girl, is one of my all-time favorite Sparks songs. It's so over the top, yet its tongue-in-cheek message and feel-good vibe are irresistible. I'd recommend this album as anyone's introduction to Sparks, as its sugary sweet musical confections will appeal to a wide audience. But just because it goes down easy doesn't mean this isn't subversive as hell. There is a whole lot of substance underneath this icing. Hey Hollis, do you realize that you did every album from 74 to 84 except for 1980's Terminal Jive? Yeah. Want to make something of it? I hope you enjoyed my top 10 favorite Sparks albums. If you did, please do me a favor and click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week with a lot more cool stuff. Hasta mañana, monsieur.